For centuries, the Ogboni existed in whispers. Guardians of tradition, power, and secrecy.
I'm used to the fact that some people are scared, they're terrified of Ogboni, they have the wrong information.
The Ogboni is a cult, or when I say cult now, I need to quickly spell that it's not the negative cult.
Their rituals were hidden, their influence felt but rarely seen. Now, they are showing up on Instagram posts and viral TikToks. Why is this happening? Who are the Ogboni? And in today's hyper-connected world, can they still be called a secret society?
In 2021, I interviewed then Oluwo Olawole Olakunle, an Akpeno or secretary of the Ogboni fraternity. In that interview, he debunked some stereotypes about the Ogboni, explaining a few misunderstood issues about them.
Ogboni's activities cannot be exposed. It's within the lodge, it's within the initiated members. So that's secrecy. So we are bound by secrecy to say, okay, whatever happens in the lodge, dies in the lodge.
4 years later, a lot has changed. Oluwo Olakunle is now an Araba, the chief priest of Ilado and Inobe Islands in Lagos State. And I'm back again to discuss the Ogboni and understand why we are now seeing more and more activities of this secret society on social media. First, who are the Ogboni?
So basically, Ogboni as a fraternal organization is an organization of women and men of the society who wishes to have access to the mysteries of our own spirituality, and that way they are being called Ogboni because we believe that knowledge is power, and those who have mystical knowledge of their society are so to say, as regards to nature, powerful people. So the Ogboni is a cult, or when I say cult now, I need to quickly spell that it's not the negative cult. It's a cult or fraternity of men and women who come together to who have access to the mysteries of Mother Earth.
I further asked Araba if social media plays a part in the renewed interest in the activities of the Ogboni.
Well, whether we like it or not, the algorithm of social media is exponential, and social media has a role to play in the development of so many sectors of the world, as long as it includes information. You know, people have been much more informed about Ogboni, and at the same time, people have been misinformed also through social media about Ogboni or Ifa or the traditional Isheshe community. The rite and rituals and our processes have been, misrepresented, bastardized by people who are not fit to be called leaders in that sphere. Now, when we take a cognizance at the Ogboni and we look critically into it, you will realize that Ogboni, being a fraternal organization, is hinged on the level of secrecy. Stands on the pedestal of secrecy. Secrecy being one of its basic tenets. Now you will now see that with time, secrecy is no longer the order of the day. People who are not initiated into a certain realm now have access, or little or no knowledge or few access of information about that realm. It makes it it has eroded it of the mystery that it's supposed to have. We have the ROF and the Aboriginal Ogboni. There are two different forms of Ogboni. The ROF being a blend of the old nature of the Ogboni and a bit of social inclusion and other forms of mysticism.
The ROF being a reformed Ogboni.
I would not want to say that the ROF is a reformed, because it means reformed Ogboni fraternity. However, the ROF is now a blend of our indigenous rite merged with other forms of foreign rite and rituals, and a little bit of social inclusion. the primary essence of the Ogboni in its entirety, according to the aboriginal form of Ogboni, is to ensure that the sacred and the spiritual essence of the society is consistently and consistently consecrated. One, two, that people have unfettered access to the miseries of our society, and the knowledge that they have, they can utilize this in the betterment of that society and pass that across generation to generation. So the essence is now eroded in the sense that we now have different forms of mystical exercises from foreign society into our own Ogboni system, and we now term that as reformation. To me, it is not reformation. It's an addition of different forms of. It's a different fraternal existence on its own because of the blend of different source of knowledge that is utilized in bringing together. So I think that with regulatory principles, I went to sort of say, if you look at the structure of the ROF, you want to commend it for the way it has structured itself over time, with the quality of with the quality of rights and processes and structures they put in place. So I want to believe that the regulatory policies, people who are qualified to hold certain positions hold them. Certain rights will be done in the right manner. There are regulatory bodies that look into all of these things and see that they mitigate the negativities that are growing over the fact that a lot of uninitiated, a lot of everybody is coming into the fold. So we need to regulate. You need to see òfin ẹ̀ṣẹ̀ òsínbẹ̀ táwọn bàbá wa sọ ní lórúkọ yìí.
Are there parts of the rituals of the Ogboni that should remain secret?
Don't get it twisted. Okay. The Ogboni is a fraternal. The word fraternity or cult itself is hanging on the ethos of secrecy. Now, we have religious bodies in our society. There's Ijo Orunmila Apapo Odu, which I belong to. I am a member of, and I'm an Asiwaju Isin, which relates to the fact that I'm a pastor, ordained to lead people in the ways of our own religious system, in the African traditional religion, where we worship Orunmila, we worship the Orishas, in well-structured processes. Are you with me? So we have temples in different places. In this Ekpe, we have 3 temples in Ekpe. There is and not just Ijo Orunmila Apapo, there is Ijo Orunmila Adulawo, there is Ijo Orunmila Ato. There are different Ijo Orunmila. There are different, just like you have Redeem, you have Foursquare, you have Deeper Life and all whatnot. We have different this thing with temples differently. In fact, the way and manner through which we build our temples, our children have no right to say that they don't have a religious place to go. It is because they don't have a religious temple to go to. That is why they are going to the mosque or going to the church. There are now alternatives. Now, the religious curriculum is to give our young ones alternatives to the existing Christian religious studies and Islamic religious studies. So it is not it's not a way to infuse or to forcibly infuse that knowledge onto them. It's a way to say that it is because you cannot give us the excuse that you don't have an alternative. Now there is an alternative. We have alternative religions that we practice. We cannot call our religions alternative. It is indigenous religions that we practice in our sphere. I go to temples on Sundays in Ibadan. Most likely, they go to temples on Saturday. I want Ijo Abameta, and so on and so forth. We have our religious bodies. Now, the Ogboni in its entirety is a fraternal. It's a sacred institution based on secrecy. Their ethos is founded on the principle of secrecy. And the Ogboni in itself is a part of our religion. It's just one part of our religion. It is not compulsory you become a member of the Ogboni. That's one. 2, I will not agree entirely that the Ogboni is entirely secretive. There are some of our rites and rituals that are done in the broad for people to see. We used to do what is called Nerino. And that is where you see us lining up together. And what we are doing is we are venerating Mother Heart. If I saw you pé ọwọ́ ló ń ṣíwájú ijó, if I says in ìlóṣù méjì, if I says àwọn máa tẹ̀rú fútú, àwọn máa tẹ̀rú fùtù, àwọn máa tẹ̀rú fùtù yẹ́wúyẹ́wú, máa tẹ̀rú fútú, máa tẹ̀rú fùtù, máa tẹ̀rú fùtù yẹ́wúyẹ́wú. It's a way of explaining the way the masquerade dance on the face of the heart. There, if I makes us understand that dancing in itself is a way of propitiating Mother Heart. That is, ijó fún ara ètùtù ní ijó, a máa ń fi ijó tú ilẹ̀ ṣe ni. Are you with me? So the work that we do during those processes, there are works that helps us to see that we venerate Mother Heart, and we do it in open broad daylight. We do our processions on broad daylight. In those processions, we go around the community to propitiate to venerate certain angles, certain part of the earth, certain orita matters, to ensure that the portals of transmitting energy within our community should be closed from negative energies and should only ensure that positive energies alone are transmitted within our society. So there are so many of those rituals that are done outside. If you now want to have access to the mysteries, the hidden mysteries of the Ogboni, you have to become a member for you to now have that access.
To further understand how social media has contributed to the renewed interest in the activities of the Ogboni, I sought out Chief Olusegun Akiremi, aka Chief Sarami, a renowned traditionalist who often uses social media to teach about Isheshi and explain little-known facts about the Ogboni. Why did you begin to speak about the Ogboni online?
I'm used to the fact that some people are scared, they're terrified of Ogboni, they have the wrong information. So when I became an Ogboni, I got to know more, being in the system. So I said to myself, I can't keep all of this knowledge to myself. I really need to let people know, no matter how difficult it's going to be, I have to try to let people know that Ogboni is not evil, that Ogboni is deeper than what they think, and Ogboni is inseparable with our heritage. So those are the things that informed my decision to start lecturing people about Ogboni. And I'm always careful. It's not as if I go around and disclose the things I'm not supposed to disclose. So the elders know about it and they signed off on it. And then before I do anything, I let them know this is what I'm doing, and then they're cool with it. The criticism, but it's going to surprise you that most of my critics were not even Ogboni Aborigine members. They were not even the other kinds of Ogboni who were traditional Ogboni members. They were not even Akala members. They were not even Oshibo members. Most of my critics were from the ROF, the Reformed Ogboni fraternity. And most of them are not actually well informed. It's possible for you to even be a chieftain in an organization and not know much about the organization. So that is what I think was wrong with most of them. So they come to my page, they drop some, escalatory comments. I just delete it or look the other way. I just don't bother about it because I also have an heritage in ROF. So I don't see a reason why we should clash. So there were people who criticized. Some few illiterates from Aborigines who came around, and then when I explained things to them, they understood that if we don't talk about it, every lie that has been told about us are just going to be confirmed to be true unless we debunk the lies. But most of the ROF, the problem they had was when some of their members heard about Ogboni Aborigine, especially when they see that not everyone in Aborigine, not everyone in the Ogboni Ibile, not everyone is illiterate. It shocks them, and then they want to now come around and relate with us. So they don't like it, So, and I don't represent a caged society. I don't represent a caged group of people. People have to be free to choose whatever they want to do. You can't give them laws. You cannot associate with this group because no, you can't do that. If you do that, at the end of the day, you're going to lose out, because when people start associating with that group and then they found out some good things about them, they will leave you. And that is one thing I've always admired our local Ogboni for. They don't stop you from going to church, they don't stop you from going to mosque, they don't stop you from doing anything you want to do. Whatever you want to do, as long as you're keeping up with your obligations in the AWU, you're fine.
How can the activities of these rogue Ogboni members who operate online be curbed?
There are moves here and there to have all of the Olugos of Ogboni united under one umbrella. So it doesn't matter if you are Ogboni this, Ogboni that, everybody under one umbrella, so that they can keep an eye on all of their members. So I think even as an Ogberi, when you see the way they behave, you know that they don't represent Ogboni. You see that they don't represent Ogboni. You know that this is wrong. So but the gullible people are still following them. So I believe that with time, all of these things will yield results. And I think government should take more interest in Ogboni, because the government is not so interested in it, especially the government of the Southwest. They should take more interest in it, because this is something that is so strong that it has everything to do with everything. So they have to be more interested in it so that they can at least the security agencies and all of that, so that they can have more oversight on what is going down there. You understand? Rather than just leave it in the hands of anybody who wants to do anyhow. Because we get a lot of complaints from people, the Ogboni did this to the Ogboni. I said, those are not Ogbonis. Those are people that if I meet them one-on-one and if I sit them down, if I speak to them in Ogboni language, they are going to be found wanting. Because they didn't actually attend the school. You understand? So, but they're out there making so much noise, So, but there are some works are going on right now, to have a supreme Oluwo body that is going to, so if anybody is misbehaving online, we just ask under what jurisdiction, under what Oluwo is that person, and they will sanction them, and but we need the law enforcement agency to work with us on that, so that they can sanctify the whole space. So do your research. Ogboni is beautiful. Ogboni is powerful. Ogboni is something that should unite us all. It doesn't even have to be that, because we are Yorubas, we are the ones who own Ogboni. Ogboni is a world heritage. So it's something that should unite the whole world. If you actually know the concept of Ogboni, it's going to amaze you. What if I tell you that the earliest Ogboni men were scientists? They had a branch of them that dealt with science. They had a branch of them that dealt with conservation. And that is why we have so many forests. You say this forest is Igbo, this is Igbo, but you don't cut trees, you don't do this, you don't do that. They will tell you that you don't kill certain animals when they're pregnant, you don't kill certain, because they were hunters as well. You don't kill an elephant, because in our Ogboni spirituality, we believe that these animals are also Ogbonis too. They have their roles in Ogboni. Like elephant is an Oluwo, Efon, the buffalo is also an Aquino. Crocodile is an Iyabiye. So you see, all of these things, we Yoruba people, we're advanced. All of this conservation that white people just started are doing with us before. So you can find all of these things interesting, and you want to belong to Ogboni, do your research. And that is why I am out there. I'm always telling people, it's not about you coming to me to do it. You can do it anywhere, but make sure you do your research very well. Make sure that the temperament of the people you're dealing with, it resounds, it resounds with yours. It resonates with yours. You don't just go ahead and then join the club and then you can't go back, you can't go ahead, you're tired, at the end of the day, you might regret it. But Ogboni, when you see somebody that is always scaring you, is always, pressurizing you, and then if you're already in such situation, and then they tell you cannot report to anybody, you cannot tell anybody, I'm telling you that you can report, you can tell people. So there is nothing like you cannot report. There's so many people that have come out to tell us that, something happened to us, and then we got in touch with their Oluwos, and then we solved it. You understand? So there has to be oversight functions. So if you see Ogboni content and you want to be part of Ogboni, just do your research very well before you join. Ask around, ask questions, and when you're asking questions, and that Oluwo or wherever you're asking, saying you're asking too much questions, just run. Those kind of people are, they have short fuse. They are going to mess you up pretty bad. So just run away from them. But Ogboni is really, really beautiful. And then there is...
Does Chief Sarumi think social media dilutes or strengthens the spiritual power and mistake of the Ogboni?
I can assure you that it does not. For example, you don't see someone like me put anything solid on social media. Nothing. See, most of those guys you see putting everything out there on social media, they are not even Ogbonis, they are just wannabes. You understand? So the power in Ogboni still remains undiluted. Even as much as people say, Lagos is not solid in Awo, we have solid Awos in Lagos that I can vouch for. That wouldn't put anything. Anybody that you see putting their lady on social media, they are fake. Anything that inside the lady, normally what's going on inside the lady, nobody can come into the lady. Nobody, if you're not an initiate, you can't come into. And that is why back then, those men will initiate their wives, they will initiate their children, so that they can have access to the lady. Because once they are in the meeting, nobody can come in. So, and now you pick your camera, you're not showing the position where Oluwo is seated, this position where Aquino, it's not done now. It's not done.
Abisola and Chief Sarumi both refer to a section of the Ogboni called the Reformed Ogboni Fraternity. They seem to be the ones who have embraced the use of social media wholeheartedly. To find out who they are, I traveled to Ibadan to see Mr. Gbenro Adigbola, a history enthusiast who gave us insights into their origin.
Yes, I'll give a little background. It was formed around 1913, 1914. This was a very important period in the history of this part of the country at that time. It was a period referred to as a period of cultural nationalism, using culture as a pushback for British imperialism. Before the founding of the fraternity, Ogboni himself was a member of the Freemasonry. He was the chaplain of the Freemasons, being a priest. And a little time before the founding, about 2 decades before, Bishop Johnson, the one who was the next bishop after Ajayi Crowther, had declared that Yoruba names were sufficiently, conveyed sufficient Christian sentiments, and he issued a decree in his parish that no child will be baptized using the so-called Christian names. That is why today most Yoruba children in this part of the country who are Protestants do not have biblical names. So Ogboni's formation of the fraternity was a continuation of that kind of cultural activism. He was very well placed. He was the son of a very senior Lagos chief. The most senior Lagos Christian chief was his father. He was Jacob Ogboni, and he was Jacobson. So he had he had his leg in two worlds. He has his legs firmly in the traditional spirituality of his father's time, father's pre-conversion era, and a very firm footing, because he was a very well-read man, very educated, a very firm footing in English and British norms and ways as well. So he just at some point must have felt, well, we've got to push back a little bit. These people are not better than us. We have institutions like this in our own places too. So I can imagine that this was the kind of thinking that went on behind his mind. Yeah, and incidentally, he wasn't the only such activist. There were similar things. I mean, not exactly the same. There were people who, around that time, began to throw off their foreign names, their slave names amongst the Brazilians, their foreign names amongst the liberated from Sierra Leone. They adopted Yoruba names, went back, traced their families and found their proper names and took their names. So there was a lot of that going on. There was also around this same time another pseudo-esoteric association known as the Egbe Agba. Funny enough, these were late 20s and 30-year-old kids who were, and they seemed to be patterned after the Welsh Druids. Druids are like, the traditional society in Wales that governed poetry and literary affairs. Okay, so the Egbe Agba got together. Like I said, we were very young people, but highly educated, hotshots. And they took on the task of documenting the history of their individual towns and villages. So somebody like MC Adeyemi, for example, Canon Adeyemi, the famous Canon Adeyemi in Ondo, who Adeyemi College of Education is named after, he wrote a history of Oyo. He was originally from Oyo. He was a prince of Oyo. Akinyele, who at that time was principal of the new Ibadan Grammar School around 1912, 1913. He ultimately became Bishop of Ibadan. He wrote a history of Ibadan, and many others like that. The Egbe Agba, their main preoccupation was documentation of history. Just like the Welsh Druids were about poetry and and literary issues.
Mr. Adebola further explained why he thinks the ROF and other indigenous fraternities like the Ebeagba were formed.
I think from my little knowledge of reading about them, I think it was more as a way of saying our institutions are not all bad. The way traditional English, Welsh, and Scottish institutions were not all bad, and the way they ultimately found accommodation with Christianity, we should also find accommodation with our traditional institutions. That is my own interpretation of it. Yeah.
Which creates a balance.
Yeah. Yeah. And incidentally, this was a two-way thing. There were also missionaries who found accommodation with Yoruba institutions. I speak of Yoruba because that's what I know more about. Henry Townsend in Abeokuta, nobody could say confidently, but as our father has recorded in history, his wale wade with the Ogboni was too much, and many felt that he was actually, part of it. The way they felt comfortable with him and he with them suggested that there are a couple more in missionary history that I can think of, like that. So it was a two-way thing, really.
Is there a place for the ROF in today's world? Are there other cultural traditions introduced into Christianity due to the activities of men like T.A.J. Ogboni?
Yeah, the things have changed from 1913, 1914 when it was founded. Things have changed. And I'm not making any judgment here. Christianity is less tolerant today of tendencies like that. And I would say a large majority of people have also moved along those lines. Consequently, as far as I know, it is much less of a prestigious association than it was 50, 60 years ago. Interestingly, there are other parts of Nigeria, non-Yoruba parts of Nigeria, where, again, from what I have read, it seems to be far more prestigious than anywhere in Yoruba land. Onitsha, for example, has a very strong Ogboni tradition, and today you are more likely to find everyday people who are proud Ogboni members than you would find in Yoruba land. Again, this is based on what I've read. I don't know how reliable those sources are. T.A.J. Ogunbiyi, the Archdeacon Ogunbiyi, who founded the fraternity, had also been involved in more cultural activism before ultimately landing on the Ogboni fraternity, reformed Ogboni fraternity thing. What we called Harvest Festival in Christianity today doesn't exist in the English prayer book, and he was the one that instituted it. He thought a number of things, not a lot, a number of things in the prayer book were not relevant to us, and there are things in our society that are more relevant that we could substitute. And one of those was the harvest, the culture of Harvest Festival, which has persisted till today. The Harvest Festival, as it exists in Yoruba land, doesn't exist anywhere else in Christianity. The English Church has no date or season for harvest. There's a rogation period of, I think, a week, where you pray for good weather before the planting season. That's the closest in the prayer book with our Harvest Festival.